everyone, welcome back to Quest Junkies. It is the QuestCast. I am Patch, your ever humble dungeon master. Normally, I play the role of everybody else, but today I am reprising the role once again as podcast host. And this week, at long last, we welcome the biggest of smiles, the warmest of hearts, the most terrifying soul in all of the TTRPG verse, in the best way possible. My dear friend, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Scarlet. Song, she, her. You're not a lichen librarian, though I suppose kind of a lichen given that it was a full moon last night, and not that there's any werewolves here. I'm a professional game master, artist, streamer, and I've known Patch for 5 years? Long time.
Definitely, yeah. I think. What year is it now? 2024. I don't know what day it is. Let alone what year.
Because you were pre-college starting.
It must be
4?
Coming up 5 years. Like 4 and a bit, maybe. I want to say.
Yeah, right. Like I've definitely known you longer.
We are old friends, companions. We have shared tables, we've shared stories, we've shared laughs, we've shared the things that we do.
Lots of big heart-to-hearts.
Yes, lots of big heart-to-hearts. And we will continue doing so for time immemorial. But today we are going to get into your journey, your creative story. And the best way to start is at the very beginning. So, where did your creative journey begin?
Okay, insert flashback noises. So, my family is, I want to say, a family of like story lovers at the very least. My dad is from Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and was a migrant to Australia when he was in university. And with that, like a lot of stories come from him. Like he used to tell me stuff about grandma, like dude can trail down our ancestry for stupid number of years. Where like, especially with the family that he grew up in, a lot of culture was in like what we told, right? The people who came after us. So like we tell these stories because of that. So him. And then my mama, who is my hero, absolutely my hero, works in libraries. And I grew up not the richest kid, and libraries were like a second and third home for me. So I grew up surrounded by stories, surrounded by story people. My mum defined the no more bedtime stories point was when we were in bed together, because it was like a big shared mattress when we were reading a big book. And I went, I can read faster in my mind. I recently discovered I can... Yeah, well, it started young. This is the same girl who, when their dad was like, I am your father, it's like, I am your father, I went, act like it. So, you know, it started from a very young age. But like, I am like a really, especially when I was younger, a really prolific reader. I recently discovered I can read 600 words a minute. So like, that happened recently, which is quite extreme. I didn't know that. I just saw it was like a short form bit and like, I got all of this. Oh no. But yes, surrounded by stories, told stories, wrote stories, drew stories, grew up with like lots of inspirations. I was that token anime weeb of like yore back in the days where people would run around with Naruto headbands toka. Though I grew up with Cardcaptor Sakura being my favorite. This will explain a lot very quickly. I just loved stories, and I always have loved stories. And then like when the light bulb hit that people were stories, I love people too. So in terms of like story crafting, I used to write quite a bit. I used to read even more. The reason I read so much fan fiction growing up was because it was free. Because my mum stopped buying me books after she got me like, I think it was like an Artemis fowl about this thick in my little like 10-year-old hands. And I came back 2 hours later finished. And she's like, okay, we can't afford that habit. So like, the young adult section was very thoroughly destroyed by a certain point in most local libraries. Yeah, no, prolific reader, painted for years. So as I mentioned, artist, that's calmed down because of wrist and mobility issues mainly. But told stories, wrote stories. Like I was very recently, actually, I went through and I went back to my mum's and I got like a clear file of all the old stories I wrote. And I'm like, this explains a lot about who I am now. Ooh, a love triangle where she refuses to hold hands with a single one, but with both? Sus. The number of times I'm like, my lore goes so much faster than I realized. And then in terms of like, oh gosh, I'm getting awash with nostalgia. Just so many stories. In terms of TTRPGs though, right? I didn't quite hit this category of my life until after I'd moved to Japan. I had actually done it before I left. There's like a little mini intro video on like my story on the YouTube channel that I will eventually be better at using when there's time. Cry, the inevitability rues us all. But basically, when I started getting on to TTRPGs, because I missed my friends. So I moved to Japan in, I want to say 2016 or 2016 or 2015. I don't remember. But I lived there for 5 years. And it was the first time I moved out of home, and like my mum goes, "You never do anything by halves, do you, Chinta?" Chinta being my, the governmental accepted name, which I go by. But like, I'm either. I don't care. Scarlet's easier to tell people to write on a coffee cup. But I moved. It was the first time I'd moved out of home, and my mum was like, "You don't just move out of home, dear. You move countries." And I loved being there. Because a lot of the reason I moved to Japan was because I wanted to figure out who I was when I wasn't myself. Because like, it's very easy to get stuck in believing that you are a single, immovable, like true to yourself. But what a lot of people fail to realize, and I think a lot of what I failed to realize, is that you don't know find out who you are until it's stressed. Right? Like until you're stressed and like the situation's kind of at the most out of depth. And I didn't change too much, thankfully. But the storytelling aspect and the D&D aspect specifically, because I started like many with D&D, started with a little mini home campaign online with the friends back home in Australia. It was my way to maintain connections with them. And that's what like storytelling is for me. It's a tool to connect, right? Like, it's one of the most powerful forms of empathy we have, to live in another character's shoes and just sort of, go from there. Lots of like heart and love falls into empathy, and kind of, again, you discover a lot about yourself when you're telling stories. So that was my first D&D campaign. It was just a short mini thing. It was people went in thinking it was a hex crawl or a dungeon crawl. It was a political social thing where this sounds familiar. Blink twice.
I wonder.
About like the lore of song dragons, because I thought, song dragons, because like they were like an old type of dragon, because I was like, what kind of dragons are there in Dungeons and Dragons? And I found song dragons, and they're really cool. They're very similar to the way that crystal dragons are considered in Fizzbands. So if they're happy, their entire lair will maintain happiness, kind of thing. And like their song was used to like Pied Piper, I think. It's been a while. I know a lot more about a lot of other things now. But that was my first mini campaign. It was again, tell me if this sounds familiar. Supposed to go for 3 sessions, went for 12. And then my first in-person game was my pirate campaign. And I think that's when I really hit who I was, of like my love of the craft of storytelling in terms of collaborative play. Because like, my pirate crew were like locals. So it was in person. It was talking about like, all of it was a joke. Like so many of my big deep characters end up being like a massive pun on something else. For this one, we were all English teachers in Japan, right? And there's a lot of stories in Japan that star a boy called something Taro. So like Momo Taro is like Peach Boy, Kin Taro is like a really strong boy who fights a bear. Irashima Taro is like the one where it's like you go under the sea and he parties with like the water princess, and then she gives him a box and she's like, now don't open this if you go back to shore. That's a bad thing to do. And then he comes back out and he finds out that it's been like ages, years, like dozens of years. So Feywild stories where you come back, and all of the plot that they were going through was a joke on that. But they had so much fun, and I had so much fun. I loved that table. Big shout out to, I think they go by Butterbear online, but my captain. And yeah, that's kind of where it all kind of began and started in terms of TTRPGs. The professional side of things didn't happen until the world set itself on fire a little bit, mainly because I couldn't go home. So for those who don't know, I went, when I tried to go home, sorry, I get a little bit emotional about it because it's still like, oh yeah, that did happen. When I tried to go home, I had a flight lined up, I had everything organized, I was set to go home and make it in time for my partner's birthday. And then the Olympic team took my flight. Because at the time, there was a limited number of seats on this. I picked a certain airline, which I will not drag through the dirt because I have class, damn it. The Australian Olympic team doesn't know this, obviously, because they have no idea who I am. But the return flight home was mine, and I got told my thing was cancelled basically the day I was set to finish, like my final day of work, like the day I was set to like prepare to leave and finish packing up everything. The day before it was supposed to go out, it got cancelled, and that's a devastating thing. But I am fortunate and grateful to have friends who love me. And I had a friend in another state equivalent, so prefecture in Japan, who let me stay at theirs. They also love D&D. They are also a phenomenal storyteller, and they are an amazing mini painter. So if you go look up Snow Peas and Dragons, I want to say that's their name, please check out their minis. They amazing, beautiful paintwork, and I adore them to pieces, and their husband. But basically stayed for them 5 months. 5. And in that time, I think after the first month, I was like, all right, well, I'm stuck. I have some savings. I launched my Patreon, which I no longer have. It's Ko-fi now, back then. And I wanted to offer something a little bit more than what I was doing. And like, at the time, all of my tiers were like warlock puns.
I remember,
so I was like,
I gave you one.
Yeah. Was that the Fathom Yes, right?
Yes, Pact of the Fathom, yes.
So it was, yes. So it was Pact of the Co-Fiend, hence why it's called the Co-Fiend Club. There was Pact of the Co-Fiend, Pact of the Fathom Yas, Pact of the Flexblade, and Pact of the Archfriend. And I was like racking my head for something else. And I was looking through and I'm Pact of the Genie, and I'm like, Pact of the GM me. Hang on a second. That's a great pun. I'll offer this as maybe like one of the tiers. And then it ended up being the most popular and is the only surviving one. After all of that, that and the Undying Adventure, which is the mini campaign tier. The same people for both tiers because everyone wanted to play in both games. And I was like, well, okay, if you insist. But yeah, so long story, not so short. Just so much. And now I'm here.
You're here. And everyone fell in love with you the moment you arrived.
Yasashigi.
It's because, like, I've said this a lot in the past, but, like, my one regret about, like, our friendship is time zones. Because the amount of ideas that we have and projects we talk about doing and things, and it's like, I might have availability in like 6 months. And then
talk to me when I'm not burnt out.
Yeah, which is never. I've been burnt out since 2022.
If we keep putting kindling in the fire, there's still a fire, right? It's kindling, but it's there. Is that right? Cry.
But it's one of the things, like, just from like my perspective, when I look at like the QJ community and we talk about all the projects that we tease and that we announce and things that we even just put up as like, hey, is this something you think would seem cool? If it ever has your name attached to it, the responses are like trebled.
What?
Yeah, 100%.
That's very kind of them.
We'll get into a little bit more detail into your contributions to Quest Junkies as we continue on. Just before that, let's talk about how we met, because I believe it went back to a certain one-shot that you were streaming on the old Twitchverse.
Which one?
It was the Magical Girl one-shot.
Yes, I was okay. Flashback noises. So I look at a set of rules and I'm like, how do I homebrew this? So very often. I've won one adventure, I think, officially, and that was Waterdeep. And even then I was like, Noink, this is mine now. Your world building is now mine. But it was a reward, actually, I think, for a subathon way back in. I think my very first subathon. It was a Magical Girl themed one-shot. Now, actually, the entirety of the Shooting Stars universe was made as a gift. My beloved neighbor, Kelsey, when I lived in Japan, my upstairs neighbor for many years, Kaka. This makes sense because our apartment was called Hawk Heights. And like we would like every now and then we're like hands in Hawk Heights, like we were a sport team. And she would, to get my attention, she'd core at me from across the street. It was so good because it worked, and it always blew people's minds that it worked. And I'm like, if someone was screaming "caca" at you, you turn around, right? But Kelsey loves Magical Girls, a massive Sailor Moon fan. I'm more of the Cardcaptor Sakura variety, but I think that's just because I'm a little bit younger. So like, I'm not too young, but in terms of like the time scale of release, Sailor Moon happened when I was really young, so I don't remember it nearly as much as I remember Cardcaptor Sakura, so not as informative. And as a gift to her, I was like, I will make Magical Girls D&D for you. Because she'd always wanted to play D&D. Like, she'd always wanted to do it. But, like, I'm very particular about my party composition. And I'd already, for the pirate campaign, which was running at the time, I didn't want to wreck that crew, right, with a new player. Mainly because, not out of hesitation or nervousness, and not because Kelsey would have been horrible at it. She's an excellent role player. But, like, because they were already in the middle of, like, their arcs and stories. So the Shooting Stars game that we met, because you rocked up to my chat in art, I think, that day. And I was streaming, like, drawing the little cartoon sprites, which ended up being, like, just the way that the College of Inspiration, which is the D&D/TTRPG channel that I'm the art director of. I say art director, I just do all the assets.
That's directing.
I know. That's why I requested as the title. It makes me look so much fancier and it looks great on a resume. But the sprite work, which is like basically we had little GIFs that would react, because I am very conscious of the fact that not everyone wants their face online. I am more used to it now than I was back then. I started a facecam streamer, went a PNG tuber streamer, went a VTuber streamer, back to a facecam streamer, mixed bag. Basically, happy to do all of them because I can be all four if I want to. There's never let anybody tell you that you should be one thing. Don't shrink yourself to be digestible. Let them choke if they can't tell you. And I'm like, yes, that's why. No, it was like they can choke or something like that. Anyway, we met through that. We got talking because we just talked. Because, you know, streamer, two-way chatter. You in fact do the conversation. It's part of the appeal. And, like, we just bonded, I guess. I can't remember too much after that. But, like, it was just, like, chill talky vibes, enthusiastic vibes, emotionally there vibes. And the Shooting Stars universe has since migrated to, you know, more appropriate TTRPGs, like, very specifically Girl by Moonlight, which is amazing system. Blades in the Dark-esque, but, like, lots of feelings. And then you invited me to be on a certain one-shot.
I did. That was the very, very next stage. I got in touch. I was like, hey, so I'm doing this thing. I'd like you to be part of it. It's called The Depths of Dark Toe. It's our first one-shot. It's
That sounds
set in Wildmount, the Critical Role continent, and
That's cool.
and we're gonna be pirates. It's a pirate adventure.
I like pirates.
And you didn't just bring a pirate to the table, did you?
No, I brought an elder god for some reason. I don't know how, I don't know why. But polarity, my little love.
I'm never even sure where to even begin a conversation about polarity, because just for some context, this was a character created by the wonderful Scarlet Song.
Level 5, 2-level rogue, 3-level divination wizard.
That's exactly it. A vibrant macaw, if I recall correctly, the description was...
It was for a charity stream too, because I remember putting red feathers in my hair for donors.
That is correct, yes. I forgot about that, yeah. So the idea was this was a parrot-flavored Aarakocra that was raised by Kenku, so they spoke in mimicry.
Kenku.
Which was already amazing, and then we decided, oh, no, you know what? You've got some Tarot. You've got a deck of illusions.
Yeah, I wanted to play with that concept of divination wizard, because divination wizards aren't flavored as much as I'd like to the actual divination stuff, right? But like that's kind of why I was like, hey, if I'm a wizard, I want to explain it through like that sort of stuff.
Which must have been the point where you made a pact with some sort of elder being that then manifested.
Yeah, we'll go with that. That makes sense, right?
You'll find the one shot on the Quest Junkies YouTube channel. Go and check it out, because TLDR. Polarity makes incredibly accurate predictions. Like, you ever see those like BuzzFeed articles, and it's like, oh, the Baba Yaga of fortune telling has made some terrible predictions for 2025, or all this garbage articles that you get every time. But like, if that was legitimate, that's polarity. Like, polarity called pretty much everything I had planned for the one shot, and has since done more.
Yeah, like, so for context for folk at home, polarity speaks in few words and few sentences. Very often repeats what they said. I still remember the look on GTG Vicky's face when I imitated their voice back at them, being like, clever bird. And they were just like... And I'm like, Kenku. But I remember, like, just breaking out stuff, because I didn't know anybody at that table aside from you. I was like, hi. I was shaking the entire time, actually. Fun fact, I'm actually really nervous, even if I come off as quite confident. Shakes like a leaf a lot of the time, especially when it's new players and I am not in the GM seat. Sometimes I get, like, because I'm a very invested in story type. So if I don't know people at the start, I'm like, okay, I got to get to know people. I got to get to feel them out. With polarity, I got to be a little bit more chaotic. So I got to sort of see what people would do to react to things that I did. Because especially with polarity, they're like, on the surface, I look like an idiot. And I'm aware I look like an idiot. But I'm not. I'm like, the intelligence was like a 17, I think, for polarity, something massive. Mm-hmm. And like the whole thing, like holding the map upside down, I remember, and then turning it the other way as soon as we were out of sight, sort of thing. Like, I wanted to emphasize with a character like that is everyone is not what you think they are. Not in a bad way, right? Like, but like assumptions make an ass of you and me, right? But the prediction thing freaked me out, honestly, because there was a couple of things that happened, right? Like, it wasn't just I predicted things, because there was like little fortune cookies that polarity gives out every now and then that had, the stereotypical like lucky numbers and then a piece of wisdom. But the number of times that was accurate to a character was like, I did not know this about you, but I guess here we are. Yike.
And then like the deck of illusion stuff was also like predicting stuff, like the Medusa cards, the tower, and all like. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I need to go back and rewatch that one shot because it's been so long since I have.
How much has actually come true?
Well,
right.
This is the thing, and like I need to go back and rewatch it because every time I think back to it, I remember something new, and it becomes all the more fantastical to me.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, just what a great way to introduce yourself to Quest Junkies. Shaking like a leaf, swinging. But
yeah,
absolutely blowing people away.
Honestly, my favorite part was kind of the combat, because for context again for everyone, I'm a really like landscape strategy player. I don't look at, because like I'll play to my character's like strengths and weaknesses usually, but like what would they do in this scenario? But if there's an environment, especially like the deck of illusions, actually, now that I remember it, sorry, I'm like flashing back to the whole thing and I'm reliving it in my head. But there was very specifically a move I did where in the first round I bonus action placed down the Medusa, right, to distract the bad guy of the thing that I am not going to spoil. But secondly, in the second round of combat, and this is the part that was like, for me, like demonstrated the type of character I was and the type of person I was to a T, right? Was like Polarity stepping into the illusion and then casting Shocking Grasp with the illusion surrounding them to try and trick the thing into thinking that had cast the illusion and getting away with it like a moira. It was the look on people's faces because like, that's just how I play. Right? But it was very fun for me to see the reaction, but it was also fun for me to be like, I have this tool, these are the things I've got. What do I do to construct a story that makes this reality? Right? But yeah, no, that really like flew at me at like 3,000 velocity.
It was an amazing time. And then since then, we've gone to share some more tables and tell some more stories. We did a honey heist, if I recall.
Yeah.
With a very, very special character, very near and dear to your heart, as it had connections to your Phoenix Iwaki character.
I actually had more connections than you think, because Juniper the owlbear. So Juniper is the online name of my other love, so if you can't tell by the advertising as I raise my arm every now and then, your girl's Polly. I have two wonderful partners. Third anniversary is coming up for the second partner very soon, and it's actually his birthday today, so happy birthday to my dear and my darling. But so Juniper the owlbear was also, now I hadn't named them Juniper, I want to stress this. Juniper the owlbear came in during Wild Beyond the Witchlight on Phoenix's channel, and I'd managed to calm it down. And note, I had 2 animal companions by this point. I felt bad. I wasn't trying to Pokemon collect at all, but I was playing the Ranger. So in my defense, that's my defense. But wanted to play Juniper because the idea of a honey heist where the bear was actually an owlbear made me really happy. But like had like a big like love mama kind of thing. I think again, one of my favorite lines, because I was talking to Barry G, I think the crypto one, Crypto Bear, was the part where it's like, how the hell are you supposed to listen if you can't shut up or something like that? But like, it was something like that, but I was playing the tough big guy. It was a good table. It was also my first table with Sky. I'd totally forgotten that's like the table we met at. And I was like, oh, you're like in the most like brackets, affectionate. You're feral. I love you.
Oh, I know for a fact she's watching this right now and she just cackled immensely.
Bro, grew up in Australia, firstly. Love all sorts of like crazy, like all sort of like quote unquote crazy wild. Everyone's so scared of the animals in Australia and I'm like, cowards. Step the fuck up. Like, walk down the street with an ice cream bucket with zip ties out and see what the magpies think. They'll laugh. Sky, if you're watching, I adore the way you approach characters. I'm so in shock that I got the quiet one for Candela. But, like, I just really appreciate any player who is willing to be an instigator, but also, like, in general, especially that table, willing to like commit to the bit. Like I have certain reservations myself about like harming people in general, just because like, you know, I don't know how to be mean. I don't know how to be really mean. I'm bad at being really mean. I know I'm very capable of it because like, you know, I've emotionally hurt people in the past because I don't know how to shut up some days. But like, it's because I'm too true, too honest. I'll be like, calls out your shit, them, my shit. And I'm like, you asked me to call it out. And they're like, I didn't know you'd do it like that. And I'm like, then don't fucking ask. Anyway, yes. Juniper is both my love and my owlbear. I do miss the Wild Beyond the Witchlight table. That was a really fun table. I was actually, now that I think about it, like one of a pair of players became parents during that. So there was like a campaign baby and everything. And I'm like, everyone's growing up. Oh my god, everyone's getting so much older. In like a good way. But like,
I know,
yikes,
right?
Campaign babies.
So off of that, we mentioned Candela, so I think that's the perfect segue to move into Candela Obscura.
Yep.
As you are our resident lightkeeper for our main circle, the Circle of Blood and Time. Not the only circle, as there are more on the way. Very, very excited about that. But yeah, so Candela Obscura, the Circle of Blood and Time. Part 1.
Part one.
Fun fact. Part 2, at the time of this being released, this episode that we're doing right now being released, Part 2 releases this Friday. So
my heart. I have so many reservations about Part 2 because I feel like I was not on my A game at all. I felt like I came in so much worse than the first time.
You did amazing. Don't you worry. It was so good. It was so fun, and we'll get into that. But let's start with the beginning at Part 1, because
flashback noises.
Like, just above table. First of all, I never had any interest in running a horror story until I sat at that table for that session. Candela Obscura immediately became my favorite TTRPG system because of the experience I had in Part 1. And inspired me to the point where I am now in the stages of planning my own circle of Candela Obscura, and I'm doing other circles of Candela Obscura in Quest Junkies Academy. It has taken over my TTRPG mind.
I'm looking forward to that one. So, quick aside, excuse me? Rivals to enemies to potential lovers? Yes, I'm down for a sass off. They're my favorite kind of ship. So, Candela Obscura, Blood and Time. That was such an interesting one because the full book release, I hadn't read through all the rules properly, I'm not gonna lie. It had been my first time running it for a group as well. I did not know the rules half as well as I do now, or the world even. But Candela Obscura, Blood and Time was based off a nightmare I had way back when. That was one of those ones that were really resonant with me. So I did a piece. It was actually year 11. So I was about 17. I had a nightmare and we had like a acrylic painting like assignment that was called Dream. And I chose, naturally during my not teen, I wouldn't say I was ever really on edgelord. That phase never hit, mainly because it looked like a lot of effort to lie to yourself like that. But there was a nightmare I had where there was just this creature with a lot of eyes, sort of like a mixture of a peacock. The one that I had like in the dream had a lot more like medals and like an armor piece, right? And I painted this massive picture, let's say, my brain goes A2 sized canvas that was like a wash of different eyes, and it was called Pride for context. So that's not a spoiler, but that is a big hint to where the deepest part of the thematic components of Blood and Time come from. Like, what is pride? And more importantly, how far are we willing to go to keep what we are proud in, right? So with Blood and Time, it was like, my brain had it as like, here's your monster of the week kind of thing. Like this terrifying amalgamation that you couldn't see but possessed you entirely and took your sight, right? That was the other thing. As I mentioned before, a lot of my campaigns And a lot of what I do is wordplay. And like spoilers, I guess, for some of it, but there's a big eye theme. More specifically, a big taking of eye thing and a lot of wrong one, right? Because whose sight are you willing to look through? Right? Like, concepts of empathy. Horror for me is implication and above else, what you draw from what you don't know. Right? That table was like fire. I don't know what happened because you made the table for me because I was like, I don't mind who I play with. I just know because we'd played Vampire the Masquerade, and I knew I knew I wanted to GM for Bridget, especially as a thank you, because I also adore Bridget. I'd never played with Bree, and I'd never played with Sky at all. You I'd GM'd for a one shot that I ran when I did Kingdom of the Crystal Quaddle, and which was also a great time. And I already knew what kind of player you were, so I trusted you to basically assemble the team for me. And yeah, man, that one shot went so longer than all of us thought it would.
Fun fact for the guys at home, we took the mid-session break at about 90 minutes in.
I thought you guys were going to just go to the next bit.
Yeah, the session ended, the recording time before edit was, I think, 7 hours, 20 minutes.
7, yep.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was worth it, though.
It was a good session, too, though, because, like, so much of the storytelling in that one was not from me, which I think is the best kind of session. Like, I love my intros. I'm not gonna lie. I feel a little bit bad because I feel like I take too long with intros, but I love setting a thing for people to play in because ultimately I am the narrator, right? Like, in terms of a storyteller, the way that I picture myself within a story is I'm just there. I'm there with popcorn. I think I might have been a Bria on like a behind the scenes or like a character creation. I think actually the character creation for Titanbone maybe was like, I'm fan number 1. And I'm like, I agree with that so much. Like I'm audience member number 1. I'm here. I'm enjoying the popcorn. I just get to influence the story. But like, me quietly as always, I prefer to bounce off people. So my notes for a session, everything for the most part is in this poor overworked cranium of mine, but I'll have like 3 sentences maybe. The opening prophecy for Blood and Time that we got a bloody Crit Award nomination for, that was written 5 minutes before session.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's a fun fact. So many of the things that are like the written stuff, written like very quickly before session, because like I'll have to get into the headspace of Maple Blade, and then like I love myself a good Greek tragedy chorus, like the opening of like a Shakespeare part, right? Because the act of the chorus is the most important part of tragedy, in my opinion, because it fills the audience with bias. And what I mean by that is like, you will approach a story so much differently if you have the context for it, right? It's like rewatching a film with knowing what's going to happen and being able to put in just that little bit of like, here's the thing, feelings. Just generally, like when I run horror, I love creating bias before a story is told. And that's kind of why the prophecies became a thing at all. Like, firstly, Maple Blade's an oracle, right? Like, her whole thing, it was fortune telling. There's a running theme, if you can't tell, with some of my characters. But that's because, especially with Maple Blade, knowing the future is such a horrible thing, right? Like, everyone wishes they could look into the future, but that internal dread of it coming is a horrible thing. Like, just the idea that's like, this is my time limit, damn. Right? Like, and that's kind of why I love the Greek tragedy chorus and like the initial like Shakespeare openings, right? Like, to create a prologue of bias creates immediate fear in a way that's like anticipatory, but is like the I want to say it's like that smooth, quite like slowly rising like pull on a violin. You get that feeling that oh, it's gonna crest. You're gonna get that scare, but you don't get it, and that's so much worse. Like, the reward is the fear, if that makes sense, which I find really interesting as a storyteller, because it cuts the tension, because the tension's the scariest part. But yeah, no, after that, running that, I would say, like, horror became a lot easier for me to digest, because I'm not actually a horror bean. I'm good at the tropes and the talks of horror, but I'm not one for, like, slasher films or anything like that, mainly because if I'm being real, I get a little bit too analytical about it. I'm like, blood shouldn't splatter that way. Not if it's coming from that. Because, like, I've done so much study on the human body for art, right? And I'm like, that's not what that muscle looks like. And I grew up on murder mysteries and stuff, and I'm like, nope, blood spatter shouldn't do that, especially this. Like, if I had turned my brain off, slashers are great. They're funny for me in terms of like I feel for the characters, but I'm also like, you dumbasses, what did you get yourselves into? But I think in terms of horror, my favorite kind of horror storytelling is like Junji Ito. That sort of style of like slow build, the page turn, and it getting into your brain in like the worst possible way. It's the what if it could? That's bad. That's awful. And that's why it's good horror. So I'm sorry, everyone. I have kind of taken Candela, no spoiling, but like into the Blood and Time group kind of ended up going in a different direction that I'd originally like planned, which I'm fine with. Like, dogs off leashes. Let's go. But I don't mind where it's going, because I think it makes a lot of sense for the particular group that everyone's, like, this group is. Like, I feel like another group would have gone the other way, but for what type of bonding and what sort of character arcs everyone's kind of going through, it makes sense, especially because this session was short. Like, the second one was a much shorter recording, because I kind of actually, no spoils again, but like, I had to pause it, kind of. Yeah, that was a feeling.
At the time, it felt right in the moment as well. Like, it felt like a really good sort of stopping point in the story. Right? I was like, I don't think we should keep going. Like, stuff, like, other stuff happening aside, like, I genuinely don't think we should. And that's, like, a weird but amazing feeling to have. It's a little bit like, we just talked about this last week on QuestCast, me and John, Phoenix Iwaki. We talked about experiencing a similar feeling when the Dark of Xerxes campaign became his first TPK, because it was like a random encounter in like a filler episode of the story. It made no sense for the campaign to end here, and yet it made every sense in the world. Yeah, because you just can't after a certain point. It's one of the things that I love about TTRPG actual play, the stuff that we do. It's such a vast and expansive way of storytelling, and you have that experience in so many different ways that you don't expect. And I have become such an advocate for letting the dice decide on things. Yeah, 1000%. Because when I first started, I was so concerned about like, oh, I want this to happen in the story, and I want this to happen. But I've had so many unexpected, incredible moments at the table, at all the tables I've both ran and played in. Yeah. Just the dice always know. You hear me say that on loads of QJ episodes. The dice always know. The other part of it I want to say is like, what makes TTRPGs different than, say, writing a book? In a book, you are the only character, realistically. Right? It is you, your world, the people within it. And this is a life lesson, honestly, that I think a lot of people kind of need to learn. And I feel like I've seen tables not learn, and it's been a bit sad for it. You aren't in control, actually. Like, you are a small thing, and that's terrifying. But you aren't in control, your players aren't in control of themselves. But it's a conversation. The best tables are collaborative. They support each other, they create stories and not necessarily harm themselves for the story's sake, but they understand the assignment of, I am participating in a world and it's buying in, right? But you can't control. And
letting go of that control is something I actually learned in teaching, honestly. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm like so chill with it. Because it's like, I can't expect you to do what I want. You're not me. Right? Like, and it's such a great, honestly, running games, if you can get out of your own ego, especially then, when you let go of ego, it is the most relaxing and satisfying, but like stressful thing to be like, cool, I have no control. And that is such a wonderfully respectable thing, to be helpless and be okay with that. And again, like the dice deciding, like I do have some regrets. Like the only regrets I have in terms of storytelling is when a person hasn't been able to let go of their ego and let their character and the rest of the people at that table enjoy that moment. Like I have had some tables where people haven't been able to let go of the main character syndrome a little bit. They've gotten better, as for some people that I've GM'd for, but like I'm very lucky to have mostly not that. But like, you know, it's my job, so I have had like a wide range as well of like players and like tables. And again, it's just very hard to let go of the idea. It's like, I'm not the main, but I'm the main character of the story. Yeah, but you're also not in charge. Mm-hmm. The dice are, honey.
Okay. Quick fire round. Is there anything you can't create without? Whether it be physical or like the example I've used in recent episodes is like, I have to have certain things on my desk if I'm going to be doing QJ stuff. You know, just it could be something simple like that. It could be something incredibly expansive and complicated.
All right, so this depends on where I'm creating. At the table, I can't create without engagement from someone else. What I mean by that is, again, I mentioned it before, it's not my story, it's narrator. It comes through me, but like, I can't claim it as mine because it's ours, right? But that interaction component of TTRPGs is firstly why I keep coming back and why it ended up being like, why it fuels me. But that ability to just kind of draw on what somebody else has said and then pull it and turn it into story. Like no matter how small, whether it's like a micro expression or like something that's said or a reaction, that's something that I can't create without when I am physically there. As for when I'm creating anything else like physical media or like writing even, it's strange. My brain goes, the feeling of air between my fingertips, because for me, creating such a sensory thing, like you know, having GM'd me, that when I'm in it, right? Like I am fully committed to the bit. I'm fully committed to the character. I am weeping with them. I am feeling them. So it's like that permission, I guess, from the GM and as well as myself to feel in that moment whatever it is that I need to do. Like I'm very, like I move my hands a lot and you'll see that during game. Very often when I'm doing that, I am literally physically weaving in my head. Like I'm literally pulling at strings. I'm like, this is what I want. If we've got like the big, like detective crossboard, it's the this is the thing I need to pluck right now. And I will physically pluck that in that moment because I will see it and I will feel it and I will pull. And that's kind of like, that's what you'll see, especially when I'm there. And when my hands are off camera or I'm like talking at the moment, I will be like, I'll gesture very often to be like, yes. And I will like take their idea with my hands. But that's what I mean by air between my fingertips. And even when I'm creating, it's like the line gestures are very similar. I'm like, what am I pulling from that's in that head of mine? What can I smush? What am I molding? What am I physically feeling? But yeah, no, I suppose as weird as it sounds, the physical feeling and then the essence of other people around is probably it.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
That was me.
I came up with it myself, don't you know?
Well, before we do get to the last couple of questions, I actually want to jump back a little bit because there's something that we didn't talk about, which I want to give it its time and place because it absolutely deserves its time and place. Tell me about Arc Point.
Oh, where do I even begin? Firstly, happy anniversary to Arc Point as well.
Happy anniversary!
Because yesterday was the 3rd anniversary of the Sanguis Soiree, which was the one shot that started it all. Arc Point is a homebrew series, D&D, that is fantasy noir and is basically mostly RP. Mystery. There has been, over the course of 2 seasons and like at least 100 hours of gameplay, right? 2 deaths for the entirety of the thing. And they've both had enough significant meaning. Or if they've been a mook, that still had significant meaning because we got to go like, haha, we still have no kill count. Arc Point is a very interesting story, especially for me as a player, because it almost inherits the love of things like Poirot and Phryne Fisher and like that era of mystery in a team setting. So it's got 4 protagonists. There's Janice, who we default to calling protagonist Quinn sometimes in the background because they're sort of the youth that sees the world and is in a corrupt sort of, I don't want to say Sin City, but like the vibes of a noir city, right? Like there's crime, there's nobility, there's people not seeing how awful the world is and doing nothing about it kind of thing. And Janice is like this weird spark of hope for the next generation to be better than the last one because his teammates are surrounded by the trauma crew. I think there's a literal meme of us going like trauma team, which I love. So in that series, I play Miss Cotter, who is a maid and technically nothing more anymore. But she, mini spoilers, is an assassin on the run from the mob, right? She's left the mob, but not for the reasons a lot of people think. Like, she didn't get in trouble. She's doing, if anything, like one of the things that really surprised me about her character and coming up with it was just how much she did out of love for a character who believes she's loveless. And I'm like, oh, the tragedy, it's so good. The other characters in it are Scoop, who is like your Columbo, your private detective, who also has his own thing. He's comedy relief, but why? You know, I love that part so much. Scoop's like one of my favorite characters, honestly. And then the accountant, which you're like, yes, we do love ourselves a big, thick orc daddy. The accountant is like a person who was built for a purpose, but is trying to find themselves again. Enforcer for the mob, right? The same mob that Miss Cotter's on the run from. Oh, the shipping potential. As characters and players, the thing that I think is, if I could sell it to a person, is that is a table who does so much out of character love. Like, not love for their own characters, not being their own characters, but love for a story. Just the arcs that everyone's kind of emotionally gone through, the flashback sequences. We finally got out, like, Miss Cotter backstory in, like, the last episode we recorded, which is quite significant because it's fueled so much and, like, I got so scolded afterwards. They were like, the hell? No, don't back away. What the hell was that? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's just a backstory, right? But yeah, and Cosmo, before I forget, Cosmo is an absolutely brilliant GM. A person who understands that you need to give your players the rope to hang themselves, but also a GM that understands to back away from a scene and to create characters in a scene that have significance to build the plot is the best way I can describe it. Like, so much of it is just here. I remember very distinctly there was one episode where we had a split party, but the party would pass the mic to the other split party without the GM's input. I felt so bad. I was just like, oh man, I wonder what's going on over there. And it's just like, it's our scene now. And from memory, you enjoyed it too.
I love Arc Point. I really, really do. And Miss Cotter is, I think back, like, I remember being surprised because I didn't expect you to play that kind of character, yet it took maybe the most 15 minutes for me to be like, yep, I'm sold. Yep, I'm invested. I'm invested in this character. And
I love Miss Cotter so much.
But I feel that way about that whole table.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore Arc Point. And every single person at that table is worthy of being mentioned. Hence why I wanted to give it some space here. You should all go check out the College of Inspiration. Go check out Arc Point. You will not regret it.
For some people, like, I will say, it is a Sprite one, right? We didn't want to do face cam because the pressure of face cam can be a performance. Something that we've remarked on, and I think you have to get comfortable with being on a face cam table, but you kind of can't take away the element of it being a performance for someone else. That's the thing that I think for Arc Point, why face cam is for us and not for the wider public, right? Like, I love being on face cam streams. I think they're really engaging and really fun to be on. I also love having that moment with the players privately, is the best way I can describe it. Because especially in the modern era of sharing everything, when do you get to have something that's yours, right? Like, it's so hard to feel that connection without the external pressure, especially in actual play life, of, is this entertaining, right? And I hate coming into a session feeling like I need to be entertaining. I've dropped that, again, and it's an ego thing, like we were discussing earlier. It's that letting go of the ego and being like, I don't care if I'm entertaining. I'm here for everyone at this table, and I'm here for me, and I'm having a great time. But a lot of the reason that table, like, I really wish we could be in person, right? Because, like, the amount that I want to hold people's hands, because again, I'm a very physical player, the amount of, like, leaning. Most of the people at that table actually are my home game players as well. Like Cosmo, Juniper, and Rain are all in that massive Astral Sea game that you know about. They're part of that 16-hour session stuff. But yeah, no, it's so I think a piece of advice I can give people at home, just in general, don't be afraid to have something for yourself. Like, you're allowed a thing that's yours that isn't anybody else's. It's okay. It doesn't have to be content. You don't have to show the pages of your sketchbooks. You don't have to show them work in progress pictures. We've gotten into the habit of sharing it, but it doesn't mean that it has to happen. You're allowed to have things that are yours without anybody else's input or opinion, because in that moment, the only opinion that should really matter is yours.
True words never spoken. We've talked about the past. We've talked about the present. Let's talk about the future. What are you excited for?
So many things. Oh my goodness. So I've played so many characters at this point. On Quest Junkies alone, we didn't mention Vampire, but I want to give a brief shout out to Kitty, who maintains being my rock of, like, a background character who, if I need to be extra harsh, or like sassy in like a kind, but like, I am actually better than you, which sounds horrible. I never feel like I'm better than anybody, but like, if I need to feel that in a moment, I'll think of Kitty and slowly get a Southern Belle accent on. But for the future, well, closest and fastest I'm coming, the summer of one-shots that I'm doing is really exciting for me, because I get to play / I get to run, and hopefully folk will be willing to join, because, you know, your girl's got to eat. Just all of the really exciting systems. We've only briefly brushed on it, but I actually know way too many games at this point. I think I've hit 30. I know so many different systems at this point, it's actually dumb. But I'm really looking forward to being able to run some of those really wonderful games that I've discovered over the years. So I think that's including things like City of Mist, which is a really cool, like, if you've ever seen the Fable comics, like fairy tale, urban vibes, which is peak. Hard City is a recent discovery made by Nathan Russell, published by Osprey Games, which is like noir, but like so easily to be reflavored, and it will be reflavored and it will be mine. The other, oh gosh, there's just so many systems that I'm running. Shooting Stars, I'm going to be running more Girl by Moonlight. Candela, of course, it's Candela. Aegon, which is the Greek hero one, which I'm really excited about because that's like, I want to do basically Epic the Musical. The TTRPG, I recently picked up, it's actually on my thing. I went to PAX very recently and I picked up Fight with Spirit, which I need to talk to Pat of all people about because it's the tournament arc one. It's a tournament arc RPG and it's got digital support as well. So you have like, it says multi-sport compatible, but I want to run a Beyblade tournament with it. Like crazy.
Sign me up. Sign me right up.
Right. So like there's that one. It's just so many things. So that's one thing that's happening in my life. Next year is just exciting for me. I've recently connected with a lot more people in the Melbourne space and like local space, which has been lovely. I know I'm going to be doing something like another potential live record with Split the Party at some point. I also adore Matt Briefcase Brown. Just what a beautiful soul that person is. I adore. So many feelings. The other thing is actually, this is probably the biggest one. This is not an exclusive announcement, but its actual publication date is because I've only talked to people about it. I am going to be releasing my own, not system technically, but my own TTRPG in February 22nd, 23rd. It's indie because, you know, I don't know how to not give myself a fuckload of work. But I'm releasing my own system called Cottage Core Critters in 2025. It's 3 stats. It's Cottage, Core, and Critter. It's Zootopia meets Beatrix Potter meets Wonder Home meets Mononoke. So the whole thing is like you're a cute little cottage core critter living your cute little cottage core life in a world filled with spirits, right? So much of the system is the helping mechanics. It's like, how do you assist people in the scene? How do you help them? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to do that? Like, it sounds really dramatic, but after all of the horror I've run and after all of the really cool, like, complex crunchity crunch systems. Sorry, I'm looking at Lancer's physical core rulebook. This is beautiful system. I love this system. I love the mix. If you're a Warframe player, play Lancer. But I wanted a system that was kind. There's so much cruelty and there's so much awareness of cruelty at the moment. And I am so keen for creating worlds and stories that have no consequence. It sounds so weird. I want a worthless story because the worth that your person can't... Well, like, that's the thing. Like, people ascribe so much to the trauma in their lives that they always forget the good. They always forget how nice a warm cup of coffee feels in their hands, or like the touch of someone putting a hand on your back. Like, in the moments, those are comfort, right? And we only ever see them in the contrast of cold. But like, the sun's shining, the grass is still swaying. We're not giving ourselves moments anymore, I feel like. We're not giving ourselves the time to breathe. Even if I look at my schedule, right, and like, you can agree with me, we're willing to work ourselves to the bone for what we love, but are we willing to live for it? Right? Like, are we willing to take that moment to work on ourselves? I've taken a step back, as you know. I've started working out, which slowly but surely, she's getting there. But like, it's not for necessarily physical reasons, but because I missed being in my body. Like, I missed being here and present. And I really want to make stories and systems, and like, I'm still gonna love like the drama, I'm still gonna love like the the horrible like inevitabilities of things, but like, sorry, I feel like I'm getting quite loud and emotional right now, but it's so important to appreciate that briefest split second of like the sensory feel of something under your hands, like the eyes shutting and the lights dancing across your eyes after you've looked at something sparkly. If you cannot appreciate those moments, then you are lost to someone else's world. You are lost to the world that's been manufactured for you, to the social media that's shoved down your throat. You are not given time to breathe. And if you are not given time to breathe and be present, you are not allowed to be with yourself and talk to yourself. And I think it's really important for people to have that space and that moment to like reflect and feel. And like, escapism is really great, but like not being in like the stress and the experience of life is really great, but it doesn't stop that stress in life from happening. It just runs away from it a little bit. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that. That's totally fine. But at least for me, as a person, especially now that I've undergone my own traumas, so many, and I'm at the place I am now where I am probably the happiest and most comfortable, except for some external factors, which, let's be real, the world is full of external factors. I choose happiness. And I want to choose to be a person who still loves despite all of those things. And it's a choice, not forced. And it will come naturally if I continue to choose it rather than something else. So yeah, that got a little bit deeper than expected, but that's why I wanted to make it a little worthless system.
I mean, isn't that how all our conversations go? Let's be honest.
Ooh, what's that? It's therapy at 7 a.m. This appointment's rather early, don't you think?
Oh my goodness. Well, Scarlet, thank you so much for taking part in QuestCast. What a wonderful experience. It's always a pleasure just to hang out, let alone make content with you.
Yeah.
And I hope we can do it more. Like, I want to play at tables alongside you more. Because
me
we've
too,
GM'd for each other, a few times. We've played, I think, less times. I want to do a one shot where we're like chaotic twins or something. Or,
at some point, yeah.
Yeah, like... like the low intelligence himbos, like
I do love a good solid thembo.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for taking part. Please tell everyone where we can find you and support you in all your creative endeavors.
Oh gosh, so many places. If you want to play with little old me on a professional capacity, I'm running a summer of one-shots over on Start Playing. So that's Start Playing /GM/Scarlet Song. I am hireable if you're in the Melbourne, Victoria area. If you'd like to experience what I'm like in person, I've heard it's a good time. Online, you can find me on Phoenix Owaki for Tomb of Annihilation, on Mondays at Australian 11 AED, on bi-weekly Fridays, if this is roughly releasing when I think we are. Arcpaint's probably back after a long hiatus. So I'm looking forward to that too. We'll have to see though, over on the College of Inspiration, and you'll see me here on occasion, being Quest Junkie's first official Lightkeeper, not its last though, being Maple-Blade or Holly because reasons, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Stay safe, take care, and keep telling stories. Mwah.
I feel like I need to not do an outro now because that was so perfect.
Outro high five. Quick. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, that's how it's done. Okay.